Welcome to our virtual admitted student program. We are excited to have you here with us today. We'll be exploring political science and psychology, and then after that we will go to our experiential learning panel, followed by our student panel. Throughout the presentation, please, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. Please click on that to ask questions of any of our panelists. Welcome and enjoy. I'm now going to introduce Rebecca Rother, who will take over as the moderator.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Rother. I'm an Assistant Director of Admission. I'm really excited to be here with y'all today and looking forward to helping to facilitate your questions to our panelists. I'm going to actually let each of them introduce themselves so that they can tell you who they are, which departments they represent, and share with you a little bit about their background and possibly maybe if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about how you got to Southwestern. So if we want to start with Dr. Crockett.
Hi, my name is Dr. Crockett. I teach in our psychology department, and I have a long history with Southwestern. I'm actually an alum of Southwestern. I graduated from there, and then I went on to the University of Texas, where my PhD is in human development and family sciences. It's a truly interdisciplinary program, and we're pulling from different areas studying the context of families. It was a fun program. From there, I did a postdoc for a year in Edinburgh, Scotland, and then came back to teach at Southwestern. And primarily my research is in adult romantic relationships and friendships, and I look at the health consequences associated with those relationships.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mariotti, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm not from Texas, but I did get here as quick as I could. I'm from New Hampshire and Maine, and I grew up there. I'm a first-generation college student, and I went to undergraduate at American University in Washington, D.C. And I went there because I thought I wanted to be a politician, I guess. But I got there and I discovered that what I really love is philosophy and political philosophy. But my undergraduate major was also deeply interdisciplinary, which really makes me feel at home at Southwestern. My undergraduate major was in communications, law, economics, and government. And that was basically because I could never decide what I wanted to major in. And every time I took a new class, I decided that was going to be my new major. So I ended up with this deeply interdisciplinary major that served me well. I did a PhD in government, basically in political science, but what I do study is political philosophy, and I did my PhD at Cornell University, and then I taught at a liberal arts college in Florida for 2 years called Rollins College, and then I came to Southwestern in 2008, and I've been here since then. And what I research and teach is what's called political theory or political philosophy, which kind of combines sort of thinking about where we are currently in our political world with kind of more philosophical work about where we imagine that we want to be. And so kind of who we are, who we want to be, where we are, where we want to be, something that's kind of empirical and normative at the same time. And my teaching and my research are both in those areas.
Thank you so much. And last but absolutely not least, because our students always come first, Penny, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about what year you're in, what you're majoring in, and then also if you could share your decision to attend Southwestern.
Sure. Hi, so my name is Penny Pena. I'm a senior this year. I'll be graduating next month. And I'm a political science major with a minor in Spanish. And I actually am a transfer student, so I came to Southwestern my sophomore year. I attended the University of Puget Sound for my freshman year and decided, well, I'm from Houston, and so it was too cold and wet, and so I came back. But I'm very excited, and I'm very glad that I made the decision to come back to Southwestern. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think the thing that I would love to start with that is a question that I know I get a lot in our admission office to both of our professors is if y'all would be able to just share with us a little bit about your department in maybe a 1 or 2 sentence overview, if that's possible. I know that's asking a lot. You can have 4 or 5 need it. But then also, what distinguishes your department at Southwestern? What makes it a unique experience for the students who are thinking about attending Southwestern specifically?
You want to go first, Erin, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sorry. I should have probably picked somebody.
I'm happy.
We're all new at this, so we're all learning together.
So in the psychology department, if I were to describe it in 2 sentences, the things that we all have in common is we take a scientific approach to studying human affect, which is our feelings, behaviors, the things that we do, and then cognitions, the things that we think about. And we do that in really varied ways, in really different contexts, but at the core of what all of us do, those are the 3 things that we really are interested in. So some people are interested in what that looks like in children and across the lifespan. Some people with mental health and how that affects those things. I studied in the context of physical health and relationships. So our contexts are different, but that's what we have in common. I think something that makes the program or the psychology department at Southwestern really distinctive is we offer an approach that fits 2 different types of students interested in psychology. Some of our students are really interested in going on to applied settings, and we've worked really hard to make our internships robust in our department and give students an opportunity to try those settings out, to get experiences in those applied settings, and to apply psychological theories into those settings. We also have students who are really interested in going on to graduate school and looking at some of this from an academic lens. So we have another route in our department that is more research focused, and we bring students, after they take research methods, into our labs, and we do a lot of research with our students. We publish with our students, we present at conferences with our students. That student-faculty research component is really important to our department, and it's something that we think makes us distinctive compared to other universities' programs. It's something a lot of universities do. We just spend a lot of the time investing in how to do this well with our undergraduate students.
And so for political science, all departments are usually divided into 4 traditional subfields: American politics, comparative politics, international relations, or international politics and political theory, or political philosophy. But what unites all of those subfields is the critical analysis of power. That's kind of what we all do in all of those different subfields, but it looks very different. We use different methodologies across the subfields. Political science is very interdisciplinary. It reaches out to psychology, it reaches out to economics, it reaches out to philosophy, it reaches out to feminist studies, it reaches out to communication studies, and it's also multidisciplinary, where it kind of does a lot of different things within one discipline. But that theme of the critical analysis of power unites all of the work that we do, but we study that critical analysis of power in a lot of ways. We study how power operates through institutions, and that maybe is the most typical way we think of political science. We study governments, right? We study governments all across the world. We study local governments, we study federal governments, we study international organizations. So we do the critical analysis of power in terms of institutions, but also in terms of ideas, and in terms of concepts, and in terms of ideologies, and how power governs us through social norms, through all kinds of different elements of society in multiple levels. And I think what's distinctive about political science at Southwestern is actually some of the same stuff that Dr. Crockett mentioned. We also really all are teacher scholars, where we have active ongoing research agendas. In our small department of 5 faculty members, we have really active scholars, but we always find ways to integrate students in our research. And we don't see that there's a kind of separation between the work we do as researchers and as scholars and the work we do as teachers, but we're always kind of combining those things. I regularly teach new classes that are based on my research, and I regularly learn about my research through the classes that I teach. We also do internships with students. We have one of the things that's quite distinctive about our department at Southwestern is we have the longest running internship program at the Texas legislature. So every other year when the Texas legislature meets, we have a legislative politics class where students take a class and they do an internship down at the Capitol, and Southwestern has been running that program longer than any other school. but we also advise internships for any kind of political organization broadly understood that a student wants to work with. So it might be a nonprofit, it might be a bookstore, it might be a representative's office, something like that. But we do a lot of internships and work with our students that way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm actually going to use your answers and turn to Penny. And as a senior, I'm sure that you have had some of these experiences with research and with internships and with the hands-on learning with your professors. So I'm curious if you could share from the student perspective. Obviously, the faculty love doing this, but they're on the other side of the classroom, right? And so I'm really curious kind of your experience, especially knowing that our students who are listening today are going to be in your shoes not too long from now. So I'm curious if you could share with us some of what you've experienced around what we've just been told happens.
Yes, I mean, that's one thing that I love about Southwestern is the fact that it is such a small school. Your professors really get to know you. And I think that's where that relationship really comes into play, and you get to see that in internships and research opportunities. I know that by going to office hours and doing things like that and taking classes in the field of political science, I would receive emails from professors saying, hey, there's this opportunity coming up this summer if you'd like to attend this, or maybe you might think about applying to this internship or program. And so that definitely happened several times throughout my experience at Southwestern, and was really, really helpful in, getting experience. So that's where I was able to do some different programs that I never would have envisioned myself participating in, but gained a lot from those experiences and was able to do congressional internships and things like that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to remind our folks who are listening that we do have a Q&A. And while I am happy to provide all of the questions for the hour, I am not the person who is here making a decision. So please, 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 if you think of anything, I would be more than happy to pass that along to our panelists. Just want to remind you that it's there. And because I'm sure some of you have very specific pieces, and I unfortunately have not learned the trick of mind reading yet, so don't yet know exactly what you want to know about. But I'm also curious to think about the Paideia program. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Paideia, it is really an interdisciplinary approach that we are looking at Southwestern. And so I'm just really curious for each of our faculty, as well as for you, Penny, if y'all could share a little bit in your departments, in your own research, in your experiences across students, and I know there's a lot of collaboration that happens, and I think that is something that's quite unique. So Dr. Mariotti, we started with Dr. Crockett the last two times. If you wouldn't mind going first, give her a break for a second there, and I'd love to hear a little bit about the Paideia program through your lens.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting to think about, we use the language of academic disciplines a lot of times, that I'm in the discipline of political science and Dr. Crockett's in the discipline of psychology. And if we think of ourselves as kind of in this narrow little box, it also disciplines the way that we think. It makes us stay in our own little box and not think outside of our kind of comfort field. And so I think part of what Paideia means to me is really encouraging myself as a teacher and the students in my class to reach out to other areas of knowledge and kind of try to bridge those areas of knowledge with what they study. When I was an undergraduate, it was often, I would often hear people say, well, that's what they do in history, or that's what they do in economics, but this is what we do in political science. And I think we're trying to do the opposite of that at Southwestern. We're really trying to say, well, let's think about how what we're doing in political science connects with what we're doing in feminist studies or what we're doing in environmental studies, for example. So it's really making connections across disciplines. Students do that in our classes, but it really pushes me to do that as a teacher as well, in terms of how I'm designing my syllabi. and how I'm thinking about the kind of knowledge that we're producing in the classroom. I want students not to be thinking narrowly, but I want them to be bridging what they're studying in one class with what they're studying in other classes. And I remember as a student how kind of mind-blowing it was to have one of those semesters where I was taking like 4 different classes, but I would realize, you know what, we're sort of studying the same thing from the perspective of 4 different angles, and it looks sort of different, but I can see that we're really talking about this one thing. And that was just transformative to me as a way of understanding the best way to learn about something, which is walking around it, looking at it from multiple vantage points. And so that's how I kind of practice Paideia in the classroom.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I remember those feelings too sometimes of those moments, and they're quite great. And so Dr. Crockett, I'm going to come to you next through the psychology department and through your own experiences. How would you say that you represent Paideia?
So the Paideia program is probably one of my favorite things about Southwestern, in part because I think it embodies something that's always been really important to Southwestern, even before Paideia was an official thing, and that is this idea of interdisciplinarity. And I mean, Dr. Mariotti worded it perfectly. It's that there's certain topics that different disciplines are looking at. And to really understand those topics, you have to be able to take these different disciplinary approaches. And the more you do that and the more you practice it, the more you realize the things that are dividing these disciplines start to become quite arbitrary. And I think that getting in the practice of thinking that way really gives you a better understanding of the topic at hand. So I think because I went to Southwestern and I had an appreciation for interdisciplinary, it's the reason I chose the PhD program that I did, right? That program was inherently interdisciplinary. We had sociologists and economists and public policy makers and psychologists all looking at these things together. And coming back to Southwestern after that sort of interdisciplinary program, it's the sort of connections I still seek out with my colleagues, and I think it makes my research more distinctive. So I think one of the ways the things that I publish are different from other colleagues in my field is I'm thinking about these things from these interdisciplinary perspectives. And really, when you go out after Southwestern, the sorts of problems you're addressing and tackling require that type of thinking, right? You need to be able to take these different perspectives and analyze these same questions from different ways to address those topics well. And I think that is one of the reasons we encourage that sort of thinking at Southwestern. I think it's one of the things that makes us really unique as teachers, as scholars, and I think that when our students leave Southwestern, that critical thinking skill makes them unique in their ability to tackle questions after Southwestern.
Can I jump in and add on to what Erin said? I think that's exactly right. And I often tell students that the problems we're trying to analyze don't care about academic disciplines, right? You can't say, well, I'm studying, income inequality, but I'm in this department, so I only look at this little slice of it. I mean, the social problems that we deal with today, they don't care about academic disciplines. You need to be able to look at a problem from every single angle.
Fantastic. And I see that a few of you have typed in questions. Thank you so much. And one of the questions that came in, which is a great one, and Penny, I think you're the perfect person to help us answer in your Paideia answer, is that one of our students who's listening right now has heard a lot about Paideia moments. And so she's really curious, what is the biggest Paideia moment you had while you've been a student on campus? And for our faculty, if you have those moments, I'm sure that you also get them. She specifically asked for our student input, so I'm going to start with Penny, but if there are any other questions that, any input that y'all have seen, please feel free to share that as well.
I feel like I'm currently experiencing my biggest moment of Paideia right now, taking capstone with Dr. Mariotti. I feel like everything that I learned over the last few years and the courses I took, I primarily ended up focusing on Latin American and border studies. So the courses I would take, regardless of discipline, whether it be art history or sociology or anthropology, Latin American and border studies courses, and political science, the common theme that I found was they oftentimes looked at issues of race and ethnicity and inequalities within that aspect of it. but it used all these different disciplines to answer those different questions and try and tackle those issues. And so that's what my capstone, currently my capstone project, it's like my senior thesis, and that's what that is addressing as well. So that's been an awesome experience. And like Dr. Mariotti said, it kind of challenges what we know as knowledge and what is considered knowledge in different disciplines and what's considered as valid. And so that's been a really great experience for me.
Fantastic. And so our next question, and I think all three of you will have pieces this, but Penny, I'm going to start with you since you're the one who brought this topic up. Someone wants to know, what is the capstone program?
Yeah, so it's a senior thesis that every major will have, but they look differently depending on the discipline. So for political science, we write a 20 to 25 page paper, and it becomes a project. It oftentimes has a presentation that's associated with it that's like an actual PowerPoint. And typically on campus, we would present them in person, and it's a really great event, and you get to hear about all these different seniors presenting their research that they've been studying for like the past semester. Yeah, but currently we'll be doing them online, so it's a bit different this year, but it's been a great experience nonetheless. So.
And Dr. Mariotti, as her capstone advisor, this is a great partnership here.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing with us a little bit about what that experience looks like in the political science department? And then if you have any specifics about Penny's project that you'd like to share.
Yeah.
She is.
It's really interesting, Penny. I hadn't thought about this, but like all of these different questions that people have been having takes me back to the kind of journey with your own capstone project this semester. Because at the beginning of the semester, I think you were still kind of wanting to do something that you thought was really political science-y. And, but you were interested in all of these things you'd learned from Latin American border studies and from anthropology. And we kind of just were working to pull all of those things together. And Penny and I had we had our capstone seminar this morning where everyone practiced their presentations, which we'll be doing on Zoom a week from today. And Penny really brought together, in fact, all of the things that she's interested in from all of the things that she studied into her capstone presentation in like a truly Paideia interdisciplinary kind of way. So I hadn't even thought of that, but it was a beautiful thing to kind of see that all come together. But she described the capstone perfectly. In political science, what we do is we have these broad themes and broad topics that every student who's taken political science classes has been introduced to one of these broad themes. The one I teach is on something called neoliberalism and democracy. Other faculty in the department teach a senior capstone on leadership, on terrorism, on peace and conflict resolution. So it's always like a broad category, but then within that broad topic, the student finds their own independent research project where they carry out their own original analysis of some primary source. And so their project is really their own, but it speaks to this larger theme that everyone in the class is kind of thinking about during the course of the semester. And for me, the work that we're doing together this semester in capstone really relates to the book that I'm currently writing and the research that I'm doing. So it's kind of that teacher-scholar model all coming together there too.
Wonderful, thank you. And one of our questions, which I was going to address anyway, so thank you for asking it, was, are capstone projects pretty different between different majors, or is it just the range of topics that are changed? So Dr. Crockett, I think you're the perfect person to help us with this because you are in a very different program. And so I'm curious in psychology, what they look like for you.
They do differ a little bit. I alluded to earlier how psychology kind of has these two different tracks for individuals who want to go the more applied route versus research route, and our capstone options mirror those tracks. So the internship that I discussed actually is one of the options for capstone. So you go into some place that mirrors what you're thinking you might want to do after Southwestern. It's 240 hours that's supervised by somebody who has an advanced degree in psychology. And you're applying the things that you've learned in all of your psychology courses up to that point to your experience in that internship. So ultimately, your capstone paper then reflects over your experience with that organization, and it's linking it to psychological principles and theories that you would have learned in previous classes. The other option for capstone is research with faculty members, and we all offer research within our areas. And so students come into our labs, we design a project together, and we take it from hypothesis formation to dissemination, where we're writing about this. And so it's 2 semesters long. We come up with the topic, we design the study, we collect the data together. In my lab, because I collect saliva samples to figure out what people's cortisol levels are, it's a stress hormone. It takes a full 6 months of that, right, to collect the data. We start in October and we keep collecting data till March, and then we analyze that. And students' papers for that capstone option ultimately mirror what a manuscript would look like in psychology. So you'll write about the literature review. That's where you're tying in the theory and the principles you've learned in past courses. You write about the methods that we did, our results, and discussion. So we have 2 different options for capstone, and depending on students' interest after Southwestern, we might encourage them that one versus the other may be more applicable for that particular student.
Wonderful. I'm going to get to some of the questions that were asked a little bit ago, and we've just gotten on such a great conversation here. I don't want to leave them hanging. One of our students asked, is it possible to double major? And also, how does that line up with class schedules? So in the answer to that question, I'm also curious, especially actually for all 3 of you, because you'll have different views, if you could chat with us a little bit about advising and what that looks like for our students, because I think that will help us understand how that lines up with class schedules. So if you all wouldn't mind sharing. Penny, why don't we start with you? We haven't done that yet. So if you wouldn't mind, I know you're doing, it's a major and a minor, right? And so I know that's not double majoring, but I'm sure advising is big on your list of things that have happened.
Yes, so I'm a political science major and a Spanish minor, so that was a little bit different. Originally, I considered possibly double majoring. That was something that I took into consideration, but being a transfer student, I also knew that I wanted to graduate on time, and ultimately found that political science was exactly what I wanted to be doing, and found that, again, the interdisciplinary possibility within that was enough for me to really be able to study what it was that I really was interested in. As far as advising goes, it's been a great experience. I had Dr. Selvin, who's in our political science department, as an advisor, and that really helped. He definitely takes a little bit more of a hands-off approach, but it was also very great because I kind of was able to just completely take exactly what I wanted to study, and found that most often I was able to work it out and would go to the registrar if I ever had any questions regarding how many credits I was at or what I still needed to get done. But it was a pretty seamless process for me, additionally being a transfer student and having existing credits coming in, which I know that'll be the case for some of the incoming freshmen as well. But no, overall it was a great experience. And also working as a peer academic mentor on campus, I also helped with pre-advising prior to going in, and that's a great resource on campus for first year sophomores as well. You can go and talk to a peer academic mentor in the Center for Academic Success, and they will also kind of help you see, and they'll actually do a 4-year degree plan with students as well prior to meeting with their advisor.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions coming in. So Dr. Crockett and Dr. Mariotti, do you have specific things that you'd like to answer on that are unique to what Penny said, or do we want to jump into some other?
I'll just say quickly that we've recently worked really hard to restructure our curriculum to allow space for students to take the courses that are most important to them. And really one of the reasons we did that was for students who are interested in these double majors to make that more feasible. So we worked hard where the general education requirements are about 1/3 of your degree. They overlap a little bit with your major requirements, which is another 1/3. And that last 1/3 is for you to explore and do the things you really love the most, which makes it very easy to turn that last 1/3 into another major. So we've structured our curriculum to make double majoring a little bit easier on students.
Fantastic. And Dr. Murray, do you have something you want to throw in?
I'll just echo too that I find with my advisees that most of the time they choose their minor, they choose their major, they may choose a minor, they may double major. if they do that, I see one of the questions, if you double major, you do have to do a capstone for each major. And so it doesn't overlap or combine, you do one for each major. That just means that you usually want to make sure that you plan so you're doing one in the fall semester, one in the spring semester, not both the same semester. But one of the things that, that I find happens with my advisees most of the time is that they decide what their major is. If they're double majoring, they decide what their other major is. If they're minoring, they decide that. But then for the other, like what we call the exploration and breadth classes, it's mostly just classes that they're interested in taking anyway, and they explore, they take classes, and everything counts for something. The general education part of the curriculum is really so that you pretty much just take classes in what you're already interested in, and it fulfills the requirements.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It looks like we have a number of potential psychiatry students here and psychology students. And so one of our questions is there a good number of students who lean towards becoming psychiatrists? And if so, what classes would they take?
Absolutely. We have people who are interested in both going on to get a PhD in clinical psychology and going into psychiatry. What really makes those two things unique is for people who are interested in psychiatry, you go the med school route. So clinical psychology, you would go to a psychology program, a PhD program, you would get skills and training to practice therapy with clients. Psychiatry, you'd be going to med school and you would be doing the exact same things other people in med school are doing until you then go to specialize in psychiatry. So what it looks like after Southwestern is a little bit different. While you're at Southwestern, we would encourage both students to do a Bachelor of Science in psychology. We offer both a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Arts. So Bachelor of Science is going to be your best route there. And for students who know they want to go into psychiatry, you would also want to make sure that you're taking the additional courses that are necessary for a pre-med student. So on top of the BS in psychology, there are a few extra courses, and we would tell you what those are and walk you through them, that you would also want to take to be eligible to apply to med school.
Fantastic, thank you. And let's see, I'm doing another psychology question because this one's been here for a while, so thank you for your patience to our student who asked it. Within the psychology department, what are the areas of psychology that are most heavily researched? So the student is curious, she has mentioned cognitive, behavioral, etc.
Excellent question. You had a very good intro psychology course as in high school, but we have a social psychologist, we have a clinical psychologist. I am considered an applied psychologist, although I kind of span health psychology and what I talked about earlier, human development and family sciences. We have a developmental psychologist, and we have a evolutionary psychologist who has a heavy emphasis in cognitive psychology. And then we have a neuroscientist who has a strong behavioral component to her research. So we really do span the major areas of psychology based on different faculty members. Interestingly enough, a lot of us do research in the topic of relationships and or sexual behaviors. We just do it from those different views, right? So we have developmental psychologists who are interested in those things, social psychologists, neuroscientists. So we bring all of those lenses to those topics. It's not the only topics, but we do. A lot of us have that in common, and it makes for really fun research meetings to talk about it through those different lenses.
Fantastic. And that actually brings me to my next question, which is the student would like to know, what is your favorite research that you have done in your years at Southwestern? So Penny, let's start with you again, because I think that we'd love to hear from our students and what you've been able to do with your faculty and in your department.
Yeah, so the amazing thing about Southwestern as well is that I feel like at least for the social sciences and humanities, and just because I haven't taken very many STEM classes as a political science major, but I'm sure they also have this component as well, is that our courses have research components to them. So whether you're in the humanities or the social sciences, you'll still be taking and having research opportunities. As far as research with faculty, I think I would say probably as you get to be an upper level or junior or senior, that's probably when you get to work with your professors a little bit more and get to focus in on research that truly interests you, focus in on more specialized, I guess, for yourself. And ultimately it ends up resulting in like a capstone presentation. But through that capstone experience, I was able to kind of bring in all these different ideas from different disciplines and explore them. And again, with the guidance of Dr. Mariotti, it was able to encompass a topic that included political science as well as some ideas from anthropology and philosophy. And that was really great.
Wonderful, thank you. And Dr. Crockett, I know you have two unique Southwestern experiences, both as a student and as a faculty member. So I'm curious what those research opportunities look like on both sides of that, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure, I could talk for way too long on this and I'm not gonna let myself, because the reality is my favorite project is probably whatever project I'm working on at that moment, right? That's what I'm most heavily invested in. So I will speak probably to my most recent project. And it was a timely project. We didn't know this going into it, but right now, or what my students were doing right before spring break is we were looking at how different forms of communication impact conflict. And so when we're having conflict with our romantic partners, how does that differ if we're having it face-to-face versus through texting versus some other online media of communication? And we're really interested in how these different forms of communication are impacting what conflict looks like in relationships. So my students did this work. They brought couples into the lab. They assigned them to either talk face-to-face or to talk via texting. And then we measured outcomes. How did they think the conflict went? Were they satisfied with conflict resolution? How stressed were they? And we're looking at how those outcomes change as a function of different things about the individual. So are there some people for whom this digital form of mediating conflict is really advantageous? Are there some people who really need face-to-face to work through some of those issues? And we collected the data. We haven't analyzed it yet, so I can't tell you the answers, but those are the sorts of things that we're looking at right now. And I think it's really become an important topic as we've moved into a space where we are interacting in these different ways. What are the advantages of those methods? What are the disadvantages? How can we think about those and how they're impacting the relationships we have with other people?
Fantastic. And Dr. Mariotti, any fun research projects? I know you said you're working on some stuff now, and but anything that you've either done or are currently doing that you'd like to share about?
I would echo what Dr. Crockett said, that whatever I'm doing right now is my favorite thing that I'm doing. Whatever I'm doing right now is my favorite research, but I really do think that what I'm doing right now is my favorite project. I'm writing a book on something that has been sort of a new area of study for me. So, you know, when you're a teacher, you're really just a lifelong learner. You're always learning new things. And I think you become a teacher not because you want to teach so much as because you want to keep learning. And so I've been studying some things that were new to me, but it's been years now that I've been kind of learning about new areas of research and scholarship. But the work that I'm doing right now is kind of in an area that's called embodied social change, which looks at how the work that we do kind of out there in the world of politics begins with the work that we do inside, the sort of work that we do on ourselves, what we call the inner work, and how that's part and parcel of how we live in the world as members of a democratic community, as members of a political society. So the work that we do on ourselves is related to the work that we do as political subjects kind of out there in the world. And so the project that I'm working on looks at mindfulness and meditation and a lot of contemplative practices and yoga as forms of inner work that shape how we exist out there in the world of politics. And I've been doing a lot of interviews with people to kind of measure that change, how the inner work that they do is a form of embodied social change that changes their way of being in the world. And so Penny is doing research that really also speaks to that kind of a project. that was just an overlapping area of interest that we had that we were able to both kind of further through the capstone project. It's this particular area of scholarship has been something that I've really been able to integrate students into really readily. And so the book that I'm working on now for the past 2 years, every summer I've had students that help me out with research during the summer, doing all kinds of work that's kind of related to the scholarship of the book. And then of course, teaching classes is a way that I continue to learn. Students bring up things in class all the time that I'm kind of like, oh, this is something I need to read about more. And, you know, Penny helped me with that this semester. And that happens every semester, so.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And so a question that should be fairly easy to answer for us, and we've done a lot of psychology, so we're going to do a political science. Do we have any students that use their political science degree to go on to law school, and how do we help prepare them for that?
Yeah, so I mean, we always have a lot of students who come into political science with a plan to go to law school, and that's fine. And we absolutely have a lot of students who go on from political science into law school. I write many, many law school recommendations, letters of recommendation every semester. But I will say that some of the work that we do in our department is to make sure that students know that you do not have to major in political science to go to law school, nor is law school the only thing you can do with a political science major. Law schools today, they don't really care what you major in. They're very happy for you to major in theater and go to law school. They're very happy for you to major in art history and go to law school. You do not have to major in political science, but if you major in political science because you're really interested in that, that also serves you well in law school. The political science major is set up, I think, I haven't spoken about this yet, but we really see the work that we're doing in our department not as necessarily training people for graduate school only, although every year we do have students that go to graduate school in political science. We don't see ourselves as primarily focused on preparing students for law school, although every semester we have students that go to law school. We really see ourselves as helping prepare students to be critical, engaged, participatory members of their political communities. And we're kind of educating people to be thoughtful, critical, engaged citizens, subjects, members of their political community. And our majors go on to do so many different things with their degrees. And I think we want people to major in political science because they really love politics and they really are passionate about issues about justice and equality and freedom, and they want to study these things from the perspective of our discipline.
Fantastic, thank you. Penny, I'm going to come back to you because I think you've touched on this before, but we have a student who's curious if it is possible to participate in both internships and research in your major, or do you have to pick between the two options? So I think we've heard a little bit from you that you absolutely can do both, but I'd love if you could just expand a little bit upon it. And even if you, I don't know if you've done research outside of Capstone, but it would be awesome to hear about that too.
Yeah, so I didn't really do as much research outside of Capstone or outside of my upper level courses. For me, I think another thing that might be somewhat similar is my experience studying abroad and how I was able to do that, as well as internships. And you do definitely have time within your 4 years to have all of the experiences that you would like to have. I have classmates who are able to do internships throughout different semesters, whether it be at the Capitol or research with faculty, and I know that they really enjoyed those experiences. But for me, I think study abroad was my experience that I really wanted to have. Knowing going into my first year, second year, I knew that that was an experience that I wanted to make sure that I had during my time. So I did that thankfully last spring. So I was in Madrid, Spain, for all of last semester and into the summer. And when I came back, I actually, due to Dr. Selwyn reaching out to me, he told me about a program to apply to for the summer, which was a week-long course at the at UT Austin, And that was a New Leadership Texas program that was for women and in politics. And so that was very interesting. And it was a great opportunity to learn and listen to different people in lectures, and also get to know other students who are doing similar work to myself and have similar interests to myself. And then from there, I was also able to network and get different internship opportunities from that experience. And so that's how I ended up in a congressional internship. And last summer, I actually did 2 internships. So I did one at a local congresswoman's office here in Houston, and then another at a local law firm. And so there's definitely time to do both and to do everything that you want to do. And so that's really great.
Fantastic, thank you. Do either of our professors, knowing we have about 5 minutes left on the panel and several more questions to answer, have anything that y'all wanted to add in, or? Okay, fantastic. Just want to make sure we're getting all the answers out there. And so let's see. And so someone wants to know about taking multiple minors. And so they're curious, if they were to take 3 minors, how would that affect their schedule, and would it be more difficult, especially if planning on majoring in psychology? So Dr. Crockett, if you wouldn't mind, since that is directly in your department.
Sure. Could you have 3 minors? Probably, but you don't need to. If you were my advisee, probably what I would encourage you to do, either one is look into an interdisciplinary minor, because it could be that these minors have already been combined in really creative ways, and there could be fun things to explore there. Or 2, it sounds like to me, when I hear of somebody who has 3 minors they're potentially interested in, that they're just a really great liberal arts student, right? And they have lots of different interests, and that is awesome, and that is amazing. And you should take courses that you are really interested in all 3 of those areas, but they don't need to be minors. To be honest, when you graduate, your major will be on your diploma. Your minors aren't necessarily. You can tell places when you go on to interview for jobs and other things that you had a minor in something, or that you had an emphasis in something, or that you were a really wonderful liberal arts student who took courses in all of these areas. So if that was really important to an advisee of mine, I'm sure we can make it work on paper where all of those things fit in, but you just don't need to. You should really take courses in all 3 of those areas, and take the ones that are the very most interesting to you, that will best shape and are best suited for what you want to go on to do. And take those courses because you love them and you're passionate about them. Requirements are fulfilled. Take courses that are best suited for your interest and set you up for the things you want to do after Southwestern. I wouldn't personally focus on satisfying all of those requirements for a minor, I think.
And I think we probably only have time for maybe 2 if I'm being really ambitious, but probably only 1. I know some of our next panelists are anxious to get in and excited to share with y'all. And so I know that there were a couple specifically to the psychology department with neuroscience and animal relations. So Dr. Crockett, I don't know if you want to type any of those answers in, or share those for those students. That might be the easier way to do that, since they are relatively specific. But my last question that I want to throw out to y'all is just, is there a specific year that you would need to apply for an internship program, or does it depend and differ on the internship program itself? So maybe Penny, as an intern who's done a number of these programs, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us sort of the years that you've done it, and maybe a little bit about CCPD in the next 2 minutes, the Career and Professional Development Office, or Center for Career and Professional Development, excuse me, let me get my acronym right here, so that we can wrap it out with that, and then move on to our next panel.
Sure. I definitely think that different internship opportunities present themselves at different times. And so I don't necessarily think that there's like a specific path that you have to follow, or that you should be doing a specific internship at a specific time. I mean, maybe that's slightly applicable in the sense that there are internships within our actual department, in which they have a legislative internship for that specific semester. But aside from that, as far as summers go, you can really do any type of internship that you're interested in at any particular time. Yeah, I had, after following my sophomore year, I interned at a law firm here in Houston. And I went back and did the same internship or similar. It was in a different department, but with the same firm. And then simultaneously, I was also doing the congressional internship. So that was a different experience for me, and getting to see, actually be in a political office and getting to interact with my community in that way. So just different learning opportunities, and yeah, there's no specific timeline for any of it.
And have you worked with the Center for Career and Professional Development to get those internships, or professors, or how did you come across those?
In both instances, I was reaching out to professors, and a lot of the times I think I found that that's one of the best ways for me, at least, just because they know you so well, they know what your interests are, and most oftentimes they're already in the field that you're interested in. And so and oftentimes they also, they're also involved, and they're still doing research, and they're still interacting with other people within the field. And so I found that to be very helpful. And they don't have to be even within your department. I reached out to some professors that I had in anthropology and philosophy and Latin American border studies, and that was a really great learning opportunity as well. As far as the congressional one goes, that was also just from networking, from going to different programs and summer programs and things like that. But again, that experience was based on the relationship that I had with my professor. So that was really great, and just them getting to know who you are as a student and what you want to do.
And I think that gets us, Laura, you can tell me if we have a second, but I think that gets us to the end. Thank you all so much for joining us. It has been amazing. Thank you to our panelists for taking time out of what is still a super busy semester for all of you. And it has been amazing. I don't want to speak for our panelists, but I'm sure that they would be open. If you have specific questions that you would like to reach out to them, let us know, and we can get you in touch with them, so that if there was something that either you didn't get to ask or you didn't want to ask today that comes up in the next couple of weeks. And we are so looking forward to having all of you with us in the fall at Southwestern, and to being in these lovely professors' courses, and getting the chance to get to know them like Penny has. So thank you so much for joining us. Laura, I will turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you again to all of you. We really appreciate your wisdom and your thoughts. We will be back in a few minutes, and we will move on to experiential learning.